All right, so this is Programming for Unreal Engine Part 2. This is not a full review of all programming concepts. This is going to assume that you know the basics of variables, your conditional statements, functions, comments, and loops. This is really just to help us transition from Blueprint into C++, focusing mostly on what's important with working in Unreal. We'll start out with just straight C++, however, that's more or less just to keep things a little simpler, because we need to really understand a couple core concepts to really be able to understand what's going on in Unreal. So a super simple C++ program. This program's entire job is just to print to console. It says, hello world. That is it. But there are a few different things that are in here that we need to know what they are. And all of these concepts can be found in Unreal Engine's scripts as well. So the first thing is a comment right up there up top, the // right? Comments are very important for documentation. They're ignored by the compiler. It's where you leave yourself little notes. Now, there are some guidelines for how to write comments, and that's a little outside the scope of this video. However, you should always take the perspective of, if there's any ambiguity as to what something does, if you're not certain what something does, or you think other people might not understand what you're trying to do with it, you should either rewrite your code, or, and maybe even do it anyways, write a comment explaining things. Another quick thing about working in C++, remember that the compiler will ignore blank lines. It's called white space. This includes spaces, tabs, new lines, all that stuff. Take advantage of this when working with code to group things up in logical ways. So as an example, this space right here, right? This is ignored. The compiler doesn't care about it. We use this to kind of show, hey, the curly brace and the curly brace here, these things are inside of this, as in they are parented inside of this created function. We could put everything on one line, but it'd be a lot harder to understand. Now here you have something called an include, #include. And then you have these two carets and then things following it. The include statement's entire job is to pull code in from other files, specifically their header files. More on that later. But we use this to include other things. In this case, this is including an IO stream, which is a library that we have access to in raw C++ that gives us access to input and output, IO, input, output. Right? So it's part of the C++ standard library used to do input and output. We have string, which is another library, another part of the C++ library that handles strings. Then we have a main function. So this main function is really, really important. All C++ programs must have a main function. This is the starting point for the program. Think of it like the first page of a book. You're saying you need to start here. This tells the program you need to start here. When you're writing code for Unreal though, that main function's hidden. It's being used by the engine itself. We'll have a different function that we'll use instead, but it does the same thing. It's our introductory point for that script or that class. However, the program itself has a main function that is hidden within inside of Unreal Engine. Next, we have the curly braces. These mark the beginning and end of a code block. In this case, found inside of a function. So we have this beginning curly brace and this ending curly brace. Everything between these curly braces is part of a code block that's found inside of a function. So this is our code block. We know it's a code block because it is inside of these curly braces. STD. So this standard library is a namespace. This STD symbol is a namespace, which indicates that we're referring to the cout of a standard library. So we don't really care about the the standard library at this point, but we do care about how it's being used. This namespace, followed by those 2 colon operators, says, hey, we want to use the cout that is a part of this thing, this standard library. So a namespace is kind of like an area code. So with a phone number, you could have 2 people with the exact same phone number. There's just some random numbers here. We use area codes as an extra way to indicate, hey, do we mean the 867-5309 that's in Southside Chicago or in San Francisco? So we would say 773-867-5309, so on and so forth. Namespaces are the same way. They're like area codes. They let us have functions with the same number as other libraries without worrying about it. So we have the same name as other libraries without worrying about it. So in this example, let's say we had another cout somewhere else. It's probably a bad idea to do that, but let's say we did. This says, hey, use this thing's cout. Now, the double colon symbol right there is a scope resolution operator. This is saying, hey, look inside of this or this. Next, we have a semicolon at the end. The semicolon at the end is like a period at the end of a sentence. It's a statement termination. You're saying, hey, this line, this statement is done. Put a semicolon there. This is really important when working with C++. There are a few instances where you don't actually need them. For instance, these include statements do not have a semicolon. This int main does not have a semicolon, and neither does the ending curly brace at the end. However, the statement within our code block, these 2 statements do have semicolons. In the next video, we're going to talk about the syntax, the rules of programming in C++. And then we'll learn about the syntax that's involved with working with Unreal Engine. Thanks.